Hello, everyone. My name is Mark from the Misplay Podcast, and you're listening to Eternal Journey, everyone's favorite Eternal podcast.
Welcome to Eternal Journey, the podcast.
Greetings, all my 9-10 ones out there. You are listening to Eternal Journey, the podcast that talks about all things, all with a focus on to play. Our host, Jedi, and joining me on the line, as usual, my two great friends that are kicking it with me week after week. First up on the mic is John Holio. How you doing, buddy?
I am fantastic as per usual. How are you doing, Jedi?
Glorious. But not as spectacular as the third member of our little crew here, which is recently a constructed champion, Alex, aka Darth Herman 2. How you doing, friend?
So, boys, doing well. How's it going?
Not as good as you, buddy. Congratulations on day 2 and constructed.
Yeah, thank you. Just kind of happened.
Now you see how I feel. You're like, you made day 2. It's like, planets aligned, I guess. Clicked a few things. Some opponents AFK'd out. It's fine. Nah, you did great, man. I'm very proud of you. We'll talk about more in Constructed Corner, because this is going to be a very rare occasion where you are running Constructed Corner. Yes! Just want to give a... Oh, wait, shoot. This is episode 105 of the podcast, where we are going to be talking about 5-color, whatever you want. Right, that's what this meta is, and our two specialists are going to tell us exactly how to do it, because heaven knows I sure as heck can't. But first, I want to say thank you to all the people that tune in every week and listen to the show. Really do appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and allowing us to share this great game and hobby of ours in the form of Eternal. A couple special shout outs. We have Roshi with the 6 months sub this month. Odd521, welcome to the Jedi Order. Squid Krieg coming in with the 1 year. Insane. Look at this ugly mug for 1 whole year and still around. Akuma CB, thank you so much, my friend, for the subs. And then bit leaders this month, or this week, are Chassis Weaver and Fast Cookie, another limited aficionado. And of course, you can hang out with us every Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday on twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ. But all right, guys. First things first, as usual, we have to do our sweet pack 1, pick 1. And of course, the format has flipped for a while now, so we are drafting Eternal packs first. So, Alex, you're up first, my friend. Let's see, this pack. We have Safe Return. It is a 1 Combre fast belt. Put one of your units into your hand and give it +1/+1. I keep not playing this card in my deck, and then I keep getting wrecked, not wrecked, but pretty decently 2-for-1 with it when my opponents play it. But yeah, it is what it is. Token of Creation, depleted power. You gain a fire time or justice source. Tandem Watchwing is a 2/1 Valkyrie for 3 justice. Flying Valkyrie ally +1/+1, not to be confused with Valkyrie Warp. I have not been impressed with this card. I know it's an evasive unit, but it just, I don't know. X1s in the air just don't match up to Side Street Monitor very well. And yeah. Lucky Prospector is a 1/1 Explorer for 1 time. Endurance, +2/+2 while you have a relic. This is another card that my opponents play and I don't. And I feel like I'm perfectly fine with that, because most of the time it ends up just being a 1/1. And then sometimes it does do some work as a 3/3 with Endurance. But it's kind of situational, especially in a world where you want to be sacking relics. Next up, we have Blade of the Worthy. This is a +0/+5 relic weapon for 6 quadruple shadow. Summon plus attack equal to the highest attack among your units. Icy Gaze is a 1 primal fastball. Stun an enemy unit. Pretty simple, but you have primal influence. If Icy Gaze is discarded, play it from your void. Token of Menace, another depleted power for Fire Primal Shadow. And then, of course, the most openness and flexible of the early picks, we have Seek Power, which is a 1 power factionless spell. Draw a sigil of your choice from your deck. Going into the uncommons, we have more fixing with Seed of Vengeance. Gain Argent Port Influence, depleted unless you have a sigil in your hand. Ghost Form is a 1 shadow spell. Give a unit lifesteal and unblockable this turn. This card is playable in the market and probably about it. And then, yes, a 3/5 for 4. 3/5 Scorpion for 4 Primal is Acrid Scorpion. And then if you have a double Time Influence, it has Decay. If you have double Shadow Influence, it has Lifesteal. Yes, you know how I love 3/5s. I'm looking at that. And then Flame Tail Whip is our rare. This is a +1/+1 weapon, so it can go in units for 3 fire. Charge, and then summon, play 3 1/1 cats with charge. Sacrifice them at the end of the turn. All right, Alex, what are you looking at in this pack and why?
Pack overall is pretty weak, in my opinion. Uncommons would be the 3/5. I love that unit. But I think as a pick one, I would probably go with the Seek Power here. Just the safest pick that is going to go in any deck. It's pretty boring, but just a great card, especially with what we're going to talk about later. If you want to play your powerful cards, you're going to have the power base to do it. And that is a very good card to help your base. So that's what I would take here.
Exactly. Nice major episode segue. I like that. John, sending it over to you. What about you?
Yeah, I don't have a lot more to say here. I would definitely pick the Seek Power, and it's really not even close. I definitely have a threshold for, general power level, I guess, for this pack one for taking any card over, something like a Seek Power or Bannerman, and no card in this pack is reaching that threshold. Not even close, really.
Right on. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that's spot on. Spot on, Scotty. Spot on. All right, well, that's our pack one pick one, taking the Seek Power for fixing so you can play all the cards that we're going to draft here in a moment, much like what Alex led into. Without further ado, let's go into our main topic, which is 5-color good stuff, whatever you want. Yeah. So this is one of those episodes I'm going to kind of defer to my two specialists a little bit more because I'll be honest with you, guys already know I'm a very conservative drafter. It's kind of funny that the meta is kind of shifted to a 5-faction thing when I'm sitting here trying to draft my 2-color decks. So without further ado, we're going to pass it over to Alex to start us off. And because he has been known, he's got a signature kind of, hey, I'm going to play all the colors because I'm going to play the most powerful cards I can get my hands on. So Alex, let's start off in the level 1 or base, the fundamental part of drafting 5 colors and 4-color decks, which is fixing, right? You got to be able to have the influence and the power to play all these cards. So talk to us a little bit about fixing, i.e. where you prioritize it, how you prioritize it, what cards are you looking for, what cards are you not, the difference between the tokens versus the seats, and then Seek Powers, and the 3-color fixing ramp cards, so to speak. I believe there's 2 of them in the format, both in time, things like that. Go ahead and start us off, buddy.
So to be fair, it's not. I know some people have gone off with 5 colors. My experience has been more like 3 to 4 colors. I don't know about John, but I haven't really done 5 colors. Which I'm not saying you couldn't do it because the fixing is there. But so speaking of the fixing, in the first pack, they've pushed all of the fixing a lot. So cards like Seek Power. I don't know about Bannerman. That might be ×5. But all the tokens, all the seats, the vows, anything that's going to give you 2 colors or fix you in one way or the other, that's all been pushed. So the strategy that I've basically done is in the first pack, just stay as open as possible, picking up fixing wherever you can. If there's like any debate over a card, if you need a tiebreaker, it's just take the fixing, even if it's fixing for colors that you don't necessarily have yet, because you'll get rewarded in packs 2 and 3. If you have cards that allow you to play powerful cards, I guess, and that's what happens when you take all the fixing. It was a lot easier to do at first, but I think a lot of people are doing this, so some of the fixing just isn't there sometimes. So it's potentially dangerous to do this, but you're gonna generally find something that's gonna help you with was it the Waystone Gate you mentioned? The time is a good base for this, as usual. The 2-1 that lets you get a power out of your deck that helps you fix as well, and also not ramp, but make sure you hit your power on curve. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if John would have anything to add about that. That's my strategy. Stay as open as you can in the first pack, and then let this 2 and 3 pack kind of guide your draft, and then you kind of set up the colors that you are going to be 3 or 4 factions, and then in the last pack you can pick up whatever straggler fixing you need, and that it's there a lot of the time, so it's really fun. I love formats like this, let you just play powerful cards. Yeah, I don't know, what do you guys think?
Real quick before we send it over to John, when you have the choice between tokens and the seats, where are you at there typically? I mean, I know there are some little niche things where if you get the seat that's the specific 2 colors you're probably getting the seat versus the token, but in a more broad stroke sense, where are you at there?
Generally the seats are just better. They have the chance to come out undepleted, which is just great to be able to play your stuff on curve. But that, I don't think that means the tokens are bad though. The tokens are good. I've rocked as many as like 5 or 6 tokens in a deck, and it's okay if you're playing a little bit slow if the stuff you're playing is just bonkers. So generally though, I like the seats better. If it's, say you're already looking at 3 colors, if it's in that pair, in the trio, in the, like, you have 2 of the 3 colors, then snap it up. If your token is only 2, obviously you want the seat instead, but the token has a chance to give you all 3 of your colors, so that might be a very good question. If it's like a 3 color deck and the token is all 3 but the seat is 2, I would probably generally still take the seat just because it comes undepleted.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Appreciate that. Sending it over to John. Tell us where you are at as far as fixing goes.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add here, I guess. I approach the format in a very similar way, I think, to Alex. I think my general threshold for taking a card over fixing is probably a little looser, I think, than Alex. But it's close. Like, I'll I just have, like I said earlier, I kind of have a general power level in mind in my head, especially going through the first pack, where I'll take a card versus fixing and vice versa. Um, a lot of that, yeah, there's some caveats. Alex mentioned most of them. One thing I know he didn't mention was, I like part of this strategy involves like not wanting uh too many cards with like double pips are really important, right? Because something with a lot of the fixing in Eternal is, Alex mentioned vows and seek powers, right? Anytime you're using a fixer like that, it physically removes a source from your deck, right? So that makes, when you're going wide with your colors, right, like 5 color, like 1 in each, the more double pips you add, like the sketchier your that gets, like, significantly. That's why we don't mind playing like 4 or 5 colors, but so when you think about it like this, right? Like you go seek power for your first time source, you need a second one later. First of all, is all of your fixing for time, tokens, and seats, and then you only actually have one sigil in your deck to get, but you're running 3 seek powers, but you accidentally counted all 3 of those seeks as time sources, right? Like that that's where you run into issues with multiple pips of the same color, and then like it's physically removing that source from your deck, so that it could be a very slight chance, but it's reducing the chances of drawing that second source in those cases as well. So not only are you just prioritizing like the more powerful cards, like we saw in that first pack in a different format, we would have been all about that Scorpion, right? That but it was double primal, and so right then and there we're just discounting that card because even if we're playing primal, if we're going wide with our colors, we don't want to be relying on casting that double primal unit that's a stabilizing unit on curve, because it's probably not going to happen in our games, right? So with with all that in mind, right, I'm usually coming out of pack one with anywhere from, I don't know, 4 to 8 sources of fixing, something like that. It definitely varies wildly, but I usually have like sometimes I identified a lane that was open in pack one and have a few good cards in a color, but I typically have like, I don't know, 1 or 2 great cards that share a color or are in the same color, and then like another great card in a different color, and another great card in a different color, and then some fixing, and then a couple just whatever duds, filler cards coming out of pack one. Is that about where you're at typically, Alex?
Yeah, that's about right. I have noticed that out of pack
Right.
one, I tend to be a little unit shy because I have like
Mm-hmm.
all the fixing and just all the powerful spells, and then I just try to fill in the creature curve in the second and third packs.
I think that's just the general, I don't know, maybe unit and versus spell and attachment quality in the first pack. I don't know. A lot of the units, the commons are pretty solid in packs 2 and 3. So I agree. Like I'm coming out of that first pack pretty unit light as well, and I always have a moment of where I'm a little alarmed, and then I'm like, nah, it'll be fine. You just remember like you're gonna basically shore that up in packs 2 and 3, and it doesn't even matter if you're essentially just playing 3 colors. If you got enough fixing, it's fine. And then like we haven't really mentioned it, but of course we're leaning extremely heavily into plunder to help us along the way here as well, right? Um, I mean, this has probably been, I don't know about the payoffs and everything, but just the fact that plunder and all the fixings in this format, I think it's never been so consistently viable for me to just kind of play whatever I want and just not even care. I mean, I'm having to mulligan very cautiously, but I don't know. All my decks seem to be getting there. I'm having a good amount of fun in this format myself.
I have a hard time considering plunder fixing. I mean, I do respect it and I do understand how it is. I personally still have a hard time of considering it just because I feel the more colors in your deck, the slightly higher chance that you're gonna have units of, like, if you have multi-faction units, right? That I have been very unsuccessful with the with getting the color I need or the faction I need
Yeah,
when I'm plundering, right?
you
And
don't do
then
that. You can't rely on that. You just can't.
yeah, and then the flip side of that too is that sometimes even if it's a single faction card, it's typically the card that you want the fixing for. You know what I mean? So it's so
Yeah,
yeah,
those are some
it's
tough choices that you have to make in your games, and a lot of times the right call is to bite the bullet just so you can curve out and play your cards, because curving out in draft and playing your cards will, I think, win you a good amount of games that just your opponent might just stumble. I mean, you can't predict that right until it happens, but if you can, knowing that you're you know, pot, I don't want to just say greedy or whatever, but knowing that you're going into this, you're signing up to plunder a card or two, right? Like that's part of your deck's construction and game plan. in these
Mhm.
cases. You mentioned plundering multicolored cards, like that's like a last resort thing. Like that's like if turns are going by and the opponent's applying so much pressure, you just have to do something. Like yeah, it's a coin flip. It's just literally a coin flip, and I'm right there with you. Like it feels like it's never in my favor. So like you want to avoid doing that at all costs. But luckily, like the number of multicolored creatures you're playing is very low in general. There's just not that many, right? In a typical limited deck right now.
Yeah, that's what I've felt overall, that I'm not running too many. What about you, Alex?
So I try to avoid plundering the multi-faction cards unless it's to get to a certain number of power, not a certain type of power that I
Exactly.
need. But the plunder. So I did want to make a minor comment about So I look at like 2 plunder cards as like one fixing if the deck is well balanced in the factions. Like if you're predominantly 2 colors and you're splashing like a third and fourth, and the plunder doesn't help you so much with the splash. But if you're playing like a 3 color deck solid and the factions are pretty well evenly distributed, and then just one off color, it does really help you smooth out your 3 main colors. Because you'll have a card in your hand that's off, that it's just like too expensive, or you drew it late and now it's like it's a 2-drop you don't need anymore, or something like that. So I've noticed it's better in the decks that are more well balanced as far as the factions for the plunder. But it does help smooth out your the early rounds the early turns of the game, and let you play your late game cards. So I definitely count it towards the fixing for sure.
I don't
Yeah, and
like do it as a power source, but I do count it for fixing. But like you said, you have to have like the cards in that faction available to plunder, right?
mhm.
That's kind of what you were saying there, Alex.
Exactly. Like you have to, like that's why the more well balanced you're. What I mean by well balanced is like 10 10 10, just whatever. It's not like 2 colors that are 10 and 10, and then one that's 2 of that. So
Yeah, that
whatever
makes
you
plunder more reliable.
exactly, that was
Specifically.
my point. So thank you for helping me smoothing out my point, because
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sure it was making sense there.
Plundered your point.
And it's kind of interesting too, because typically when you are going kind of multiple factions, you want your early game to be a little more consistent, somewhere in the area of 2 factions, and then your late game, when you have time to get to that fixing, where it's a little more spread around the colors, right? But then at the same time, kind of what I'm picking up from what you guys are saying is you kind of even want your 2s and 3s to be the variable faction, so you can plunder the ones that are necessary, because obviously those are more expendable, right? Getting a 2/2 for 2 on turn 5 or 6 isn't going to impact the board like it did on turn 2 or 3, so that's when you're perfectly okay plundering them.
Yeah, and if you're playing a deck like this, like a lot of times, you'll have like a starting hand with a sigil and 2 tokens or something and a plunder card, right? And if there's some overlap on those tokens and you're missing one of your colors, or like there's a lot of complicated situations like this. Like when you have to make a move, it feels like you're playing a game of chess in some ways at that point, like more than a card game, because you're like you're delaying your moves based on your opponent more than you normally would, right? Like you're like, well, I don't have to make a move yet. I'm not under any pressure. And like the longer you can delay those necessary choices, because of like you have to like draw to get that info to know what you need to do, like the better off you're going to be in that game, because sometimes you have to plunder a key card, and that key card is what you needed to win that game, and you didn't know that you were going to be able to play it otherwise in a few turns anyway, right? And you're just trying to help out your next key card. Like there's a lot of decks where I'm splashing primal and I'll have like a polymorph and a changey stick. It's like, well, I'll have to plunder one or the other depending on how this game is going, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just to be careful with plunder, you don't always have to plunder, which sometimes I feel like I'm losing value, but it's okay to not plunder, make the adult decision and not do it. You have the chance of potentially hurting yourself if you plunder a power. Oh, my dog is barking.
the something that you alluded to earlier, John, but I wanted you guys to kind of finish down this topic. You mentioned double faction cards, or not double faction, but cards that have more than one pip of a specific faction, right?
Mhm.
Something like the cards, the kind of staple cards from the previous format where they were, Smogwing Tinker that was just justice, but it was four justice. So that's a little far fetched in this format for sure. But I mean, we still see things like Send to Market, which is a two justice faction card, but it's very powerful. So let's uh let's dive into that just a little bit. How are you looking at those cards now? When you are looking at a 3 and 4 faction deck, like I'm assuming that you have kind of like a threshold for them, right? If they're not in your two main colors, then it's like, okay, is this card worth the risk of it being more difficult to play?
Send to Market is like a very specific example where I will bend or break my rule to try and play it because the power level is so high. It's just a really almost necessary card. Like it's a necessary effect in a lot of decks, and especially like a 3, 4, 5 faction deck, because it's hard to be an aggro deck in that case, right? And so that's like fast speed, unconditional removal. You'll often get, a 2 for 1 or more because of the fast speed on that. Like, and that's a card that you don't like. You like to have access to it on curve, but in a lot of games, the rest of your deck is going to be defensive and things like that. So you don't mind if you can't play it till turn 8, 9, 10, whatever. It's just that is that effect in particular is worth a little risk, I think. And um, if you're going for that double pip, chances are that you have a decent number of other justice cards in your deck, even if you're not main justice. And so that's one of those cases where you're going to plunder one of those, medium to high level, just single pip or, justice only cards on the way there if you need to, just to ensure that you have that double justice by the time that rolls around. And that's if your opponent is, you know, doing bad things to you. Like if you're just on ahead on board that game and whatnot, you're chilling anyway, right? You can take your time, keep attacking. No need to
Okay, so
plunder in those cases.
talk to me about non-removal based cards like units and weapons versus stuff that require
Most of
double.
those are way more replacement level, right? Like, uh, I don't know, like even a card like Leyline Tracer, I think becomes a little more like replacement level when you're talking about going that wide with your factions, because Leyline Tracer, I mean, it'll still do work late in the game, but at that point, your hand is low on resources as well. Like, what are the chances you can even activate the spell part? Like, and it was a hard to cast unit anyway, right? Normally, that's a card that would, you know, look at as a signal to go into time, and we love playing that card. But that's a double pip, you know, 4 drop,
Mm-hmm.
and its stats are a little low. So that's one, that's a kind of card where the rating goes down for sure if you're getting uh, a little crazy with your factions.
Fair. What about you, Alex? What do you think as far as cards like Leyline Tracer and Send the Market?
So those are well, I mean, Leyline Tracer, you want to try to play it on 4, but the Send to Market for me is a card that I'm okay with having like 7 green sources in a deck and like being able to play it when I need to, because typically you don't need it on 5. If you need it on 5, you've already been getting your butt kicked for a few turns probably, and that game is not looking so good anyways. But generally it's a late game card, so yeah, I'm fully okay with. I mean, it's not really a splash, but not having a super high amount of sources for that color. I do tend to get a little greedy with my power bases, but that's just me. Um, as far as like unit and like with the power base, I do like to try to my early game kind of grounded into colors if possible, and then have like late game units be like splashes, or your your powerful units that are big but cost more, that you can get away with it being your off color, kind of just your finishers or whatever. So I tend to try to do that, but sometimes you just kind of do what you can do with the power base and just put the units in where you got them, and hope the fixing gets you there. That's my take on the
Yeah.
power with the units.
Got you. So let's talk a little bit about not necessarily traps, but I mean, there's no denying that there are some tribal synergies in this format, and the tribal synergies are within I don't know what we're calling them. Do we have a name for the 3 faction groups? No, right? There's no specific kind of name for them, right?
Like, no, as far right, like the wedge,
Yeah,
or I'm not aware of
wedge or
anything
shard.
like that for Eternal, man. I don't think
Okay,
we have something like that.
cool. I'm fine with that.
We
So,
kind of had
anyways,
Miria and Zolta, I guess, but at this point, it's all muddled.
yeah, I that was never even in my vocabulary. Like I know what you're talking about,
Is
but
it
like
like
it was
Yeah.
never even a thing.
What
It seemed
about
like they were going that way, and now
isn't
And even then we
Carandon one?
no, that's a city. I mean, a generic term, like because Carandon is knowledge now. No, Carandon is tradition. No, it
no.
has shadow. I don't even remember now. That's funny. What is knowledge? Right? No. Knowledge is the
Vision,
vision. Yes. No, purpose. Purpose. It's purpose.
purpose.
No, wait. No, Corendon is what? Corendon is. I'm gonna leave this in, by the way. So Corendon is justice, shadow, time. That is
Yes, that's it. Justice, shadow, time.
vision. It's vision, right?
That's it.
Oh, my bad.
Okay, so that was never officially for time, shadow, justice.
Anywho,
So let's talk a little bit about that. Are there any cards that kind of that you guys have had a decent amount of success with in synergy base that it would cause you to maybe narrow your deck a little bit? Because obviously the whole point of running 3, 4, 5 color decks is to kind of just run the best of everything. Not necessarily going down one lane, but just running the best cards you can find. That sometimes obviously doesn't always line up with synergy based decks where, for example, you are the soldier amplify deck, you're playing a bunch of 1/1s for 1 because you know that later on they have the potential of being huge. So what cards do you guys and we'll start off with you, Alex, do you kind of look at that at all anymore in this format, or do you just kind of let those cards go? And if so, which ones are the ones that will pull you to narrow your deck a little bit?
I guess one that still would. I wouldn't force the deck in any direction in pack 2 because of this card. But if I already had a few soldiers going on after pack 1, Call to Allies is a very powerful card. That's the 3 justice. 2? Is it 2? You basically
No, it's 3. 3 justice.
You amplify by depleting your soldiers, and they get a 3/3 weapon on them, and then it puts units on the top of your deck for the amount of amplifies that you did. So if you have a few soldiers out, you can just run away with the game with that card. It's very powerful. But no, not really. Synergy is kind of out the window for me. I mean, when I've tried to do synergies, I've thought I've had the most amazing Mandrake deck ever, and it goes like 1 in 3. Granted, that could be variance, but it's just I'm like staying away from it mostly because it's not working for me. I don't know about you guys.
no, I'd kind of
John?
put mandrakes towards the trap category. Like, did I mention traps? Yeah, like the synergies there seem like they're going to be great. It's like just hopefully the synergies are just working on the good mandrakes in your deck, right? And you're not like playing a bunch of pollen sprayers to go all in on that, that's a trap, right? The
Man,
ones I
see, I must just have a horrible grasp of the concept because I like pine sprayers. I think that 1.5 just blocks a ridiculous amount of this format. Hey, I am not seeing a ton of success in this format, so I could easily be wrong. And once again, I mean, clearly because I'm trying to draft 2 colors, maybe splashing for 1 or 2 cards in a third faction, maybe. But most of the time, I'm trying to stick to 2 colors, and you guys are here jamming just magical Christmas land like it's going out of
I
style.
just
So
play every
clearly,
card I want, all the good ones,
I think
only
like
good ones.
if you're not splashing a third color, I think you're not doing it right this format right now. I mean, that's just what I think.
boom, hot take from day 2
I mean,
champion.
I'll even still in this format, like it seems like I'm in such an open lane. I'm like definitely just 2 colors. Oh yeah, this time I'm just these 2 colors, and then it's just like a random martial efficiency commander.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I'm like, all right, fine, whatever.
And you happen to have
3
the
colors again.
fixing,
Let's go.
right? Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's like I already have the fixing. Who cares?
It's just so easy to splash that powerful card, you know.
So
Yeah,
we were talking about those the you know, synergies and stuff still, right? Like so I still like sentinels, I think, right? Like if I get an ancient defenses somewhere coming through pack 1 and like a temple raider or 2, I think that colors my draft a little bit in picks 2 and packs 2 and 3. And I think
well,
generally in a positive way. I think Sentinels has overperformed. Like if I gotta say I like a faction a little bit still, or a tribe.
Well, the thing about Sentinels though is that I feel like it's the most standalone of the quote unquote synergies, right? Most of the cards, minus the 4/4 or the 2/2 charge that becomes a 4/4 charge, and then even the 2/2 decay that gets bigger when you play a Sentinel. Those cards are and then Laser Burst, right? Or Laser Blast. Laser Blast and the 2/2 whatever its name is. I can't believe I'm forgetting it right now.
Temple
and like
Raider.
Temple Raider. No,
Yeah,
Temple Raider, the 2/2 charge. I'm thinking the other one, the actual Sentinel, the Praxis Sentinel.
The roaming cache?
The
one that they just
the
it used to be a
overcharger?
2/1. It gets bigger.
The overcharger. It's a 2/2
Yeah.
now, right?
Yes.
Isn't that the overcharger, John?
No, I don't think it's
no.
over. Anywho, or
I'm gonna
they
look
know
it
what
up.
it is.
I'll look it up.
Anywho, like all those cards, they get benefits, right, for being for having Sentinels in your deck, but for the most part, they're just fine on their own as well. All the Sentinels are fairly well statted, right? You want to run Bashers, you want to run all the time Sentinels. Yeah, I think that's the deck that you can go into quote unquote Sentinels, and even if you don't get there, you're still happy with the cards you got versus the other synergies, the Grenadins, the Mandrakes, the Soldiers. You have a chance that if you don't get the critical mass of cards that you need to make the deck work, that you're stuck with a bunch of subpar cards. And I think that's part of what makes Sentinels so appealing.
Yeah, that's probably why it's the only one I'm mentioning. Yeah, I guess I still end up with like an occasional soldier synergy, and like one of like the decks I drafted recently, I'd say it was like colored by like, you know, like a call of allies I had going on or whatever. But that's like a rare thing, I would say. Yeah, I guess that's why I end up with getting some soldier synergies going on, or not soldier, sentinel synergies anyway, just because some of those are the better units. I guess I'm just taking good cards, period. But
Yep,
I don't
you
know,
can't go
it
wrong.
definitely colors some of my picks, like maybe gatekeeper over something, and an Okessa's audience over something else, and a man, side streets, right? Man, if you got an ancient defenses, those side streets are so good.
Yeah, there's the other thing, right? So, like Ancient Defense buffs your Sentinels, but you're perfectly all right paying 3 for 3 damage as well at slow speed. So that's another card that adds to the Sentinel deck, but you just don't mind having it if you're fire at all.
It's the power
What were you
cell.
gonna say, Alex?
Power cell is the card we were talking about, right?
Yes.
Power cell, yes, there you go. That's the one. Thank you. It actually makes a lot of sense that you guys, especially Alex, when he mentioned earlier that it feels like more and more people are kind of jumping on that train. Because I mean, you guys watch my stream. There have been so many times where I'm like, all right, I guess this is our lane, and then I just see these cards that don't make any kind. And you said that too, John, with the martial efficiency just randomly in the deck or in the packs. And it keeps throwing me off because here I am trying to identify my lane. I'm like, what is this card still doing here? We haven't seen anything that goes with this, but yet here it is. I'm like, is this a sign or is this a trap? And now it makes a lot more sense that if more and more people are drafting that 4-faction kind of deck, then you have a higher chance of those cards kind of slipping through the cracks. They'll see, yes, maybe they were drafting time or whatever, but a stronger justice card or a stronger fire card went in the pack and they have the fixing for it. So like, oh, I'll just take that and I'll let this, good, but not as good as this card go, the difference, they pick up a 5 and let a 4 go by.
Yeah,
I'm seeing as a signal, but it's really just the fact that they took the 5 out of the pack instead of the 4 level card.
I guess
Or
you end up
I
with
should say that take the A instead of the B. There you go.
right. I guess you do end up like if more people are just taking the best cards out of each pack, and like you're over here still trying to make some synergy stuff work. Well, you're just gonna get like the dregs of everything, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Which, I mean, in my defense, and I've mentioned it before, I don't like drafting synergies because of that exact reason. I always feel if you don't hit that critical mass, Calling Allies is a great example of that card where a lot of people, a lot of good drafters have been high on that card. And I am so, like, it takes a lot for me to draft it because I've gotten wrecked by it. I know the power level of it, but it just feels so hot or cold to me, right? There are times where I've drawn it and I've had no soldiers, or I just don't have the window to play it right. My opponent's put pressure on me, or I draft it early and I just don't get that critical mass of soldiers.
Or the dreaded, like, you have to upgrade your units in play, but you're stuck on 3 power, and like you by doing it, you're jamming up your draws to guarantee no power for like 3 turns.
Yep.
It can be awkward.
So that's the issue I have with cards like that. So I actually, even though I am still drafting, so I'm like double handicapping myself in this format because I'm not only drafting non-synergy decks, but then I'm still sticking to the 2 factions. So I'm just getting double dregs of everybody.
Yeah,
which
Jed,
can explain a lot.
I think you're kind of hitting the nail on the head there. Like, that's basically what I've kind of been noticing. You're like, man, what's happening to me? I'm like, yeah, you're kind of like, you're wavering, you're not going one way or the other enough, right?
So like, the last thing go ahead.
I was going to say, well, for example, like how good the fixing is in this format. John like took a display, like first pack 1 pick 1 the other day, and like went 7 wins with that, and it's like had no doubt that it was going to be playable basically in the deck. And I've also noticed because of the fixing, it allows you to make a hard turn in pack 2 if, like, say the 3rd pick rolls around and you're like, there's a Barricade Basher. So, like, there's a red player there's no red player, like, because those cards get taken, those cards just win games, or just some bomb rare in a color that you don't have any cards of yet. It's a lot easier to just take a chance and say, okay, green is open, I'm going to jump all in, and I'm going to rely on the fixing that I have for my other colors and the cards that I have already. And that's worked out pretty well because you get 2 packs in a row of that open faction,
So one last thing I'm gonna touch on before we move on. Where do you guys sit as far as your curve goes, right? Your standard curve that we've talked about on the show before, where you still want that certain number of 2s, 3s, and 4s, right? You can't just draft the most powerful cards because then you have the chance of getting run over in the early game, et cetera, et cetera. So let's start off with you, John. Where do you sit at? Like, how important is your curve when you're building the kind of decks? Like, because the whole point is to draft the most powerful cards, but then what happens if there's an A in the pack or a B, but then you realize that you have no 3 drops?
Yeah, extremely important. Most powerful cards doesn't mean most expensive cards, right? I I try to like not play more than 4 or 5 cards going that cost 5 or more, and like most of those aren't units. They're like sends to market, right? Like I like my curve to stop at 4 if I can, and then like my actual top end is like sends to market and maybe like one dichro or something, right? Like if I end up with some powerful top end units like that, a lot of times they get relegated to the market um, because they're powerful, but they're actually situational, and that situation is making it to 6 mana, right? Um, when we're talking about grafter markets, a lot of times they end up coming out buffed anyway, so it's like a win-win. Um, that's a whole nother discussion, right, with markets and everything. But I like my decks. When I'm doing that, I like to have multiple ways to get those cards as well. But yeah, as far as curve, it's extremely important. Like I'm not neglecting at all on my 2s and 3s. They're the most important still. Um, I'd say like my 4s are still pretty important, but I like in an average Eternal deck, I think all my 4s, 5s, and 6s or whatever, and like most decks don't go above 6, right? I think there's a hard limit to all those, and they need to be powerful for me to want to play them at all. Um, I think just getting on board early and often, and then you know that's what I like most of my games for me to be applying pressure. Like I like to be the one attacking, um, and so even when I'm playing, you know, 3, 4, 5 faction decks, like I still like to get on board and start attacking. Like I'm playing um, you know, uh, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the card name, but the gate crash or whatever, the 3/1, right? Like that's like a good turn two play
Gatekeeper.
for me. Yeah, gatekeeper. It's a pretty aggressive unit, but it plunders still, right? So it still works fine in a deck like that. But you know, turn 3 comes around, my opponent didn't get on the board. I'm gonna buff that guy and get in for 6. I'm still like attacking, and my whole deck is still probably designed with that in mind. Like occasionally I'll be like a control deck or whatever, but that's pretty rare. Like even when I'm like I mentioned playing multiple factions, I'm still trying to curve out every game if possible.
Hmm. Alex, do you have anything to add?
No, it's just I like the early or curve is very important, especially early curve, so you don't get ran over. Still need your standard like 2 drops, 3 drops, 4 drops, and that just goes back to the point of trying to be based in 2 colors, especially with your early curve. Have your late powerful units touch your other factions. Um, Real quick regarding markets, especially because there's so many grafters, right? There's so much market access. It's a good place to hide fixing for that color if you need more pips. So like you can hide a fire sigil in the market for your fire grafter, and then that gives you your extra red pip for something you might need, or it's just a nice fail safe to have a power in the market. So it's a trick you could do.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, I think that is good enough. I think we've done a decent job of breaking things down. Overall, 4 factions are always a more interesting topic to cover because they're so broad, right? It's hard to be like, well, these are the specific cards you're looking for, because actually completely counterintuitive to how you want to be multiple factions. But I think I got a decent amount of information, and I'm going to take it going forward. Some people may be getting a little stale of this format, but I've surprisingly still been enjoying it, to be completely honest with you. Like, I mean, it definitely doesn't have that fresh feel, but I'm definitely not bored of it. I'm excited to draft it, so I'll consider that a win. Which means that takes us to our constructed corner, and want to go ahead and take a moment to give a great shout out to, of course, our host and friend, deciding that they wanted to play constructed this season and doing great things. Alex Darth _Herman 2, buddy, congratulations on making day 2. in the Expedition Challenge. Yeah, man, congrats, dude.
Thanks. I'm pretty stoked about it. Actually, it's pretty cool.
Do you want to take a minute to kind of break us down through your thought process, like what made you want to play, and then how it went for you, real quick?
Yeah, I just decided this year I wanted to play Construct a little more, take it a little more seriously, and try to be competitive. So I was like, I targeted this expedition event as like my first event. I've never done any of those before. And honestly, I was testing mostly soldiers for like the 2 weeks before because it seemed like the most aggro deck. That's the decision. Like John helped me decide that. Was like, well, what's your style? Aggro. Okay, soldiers is probably the most aggro deck. That's good. So went through like 6 iterations of that. I was like pushing and pulling with John and IP about like putting more counter spells in the deck because I was getting salty about my units getting killed. And so after all that testing, and then like I was probably going to play the last version of soldiers this morning, I had a change of heart. Soldiers, I was playing it on ladder. I was just getting my butt kicked. I'm like, yeah, I was almost didn't even play. And then Always Face had posted this mono red deck, which I pretty much can pick up mono red at any time and feel pretty confident about it. And yeah, it got me there. It was pretty fun. And I didn't have much time. I played late, so I wanted to use a fast deck, win or lose. You know, you're in and out of the games pretty fast. And I did it with like an hour to spare, so it was
Nice.
kind of like a whirlwind. Yeah, it was pretty fun.
I mean, we've mentioned it a couple times on the show. We joke around and stuff, but I mean, that aggro is what you do. You're good at it, you know? And I'm glad it got you there. Like, I'm very proud of you. I think that's fantastic. So,
Yeah,
good job, man.
Yeah, no, thanks. I mean, all the credit goes to Always Face. I was like adding them when they're like asleep and wherever they're at in their part of the world. One of them luckily saw it and like posted the deck last minute there, and I ran it. But yeah, Always Face. I think a couple other members of the team played it, and I think Alex Fierro did as well. And I mean, he got
I
top
think
10.
Alex Fierro played it. Actually, Face and IP played soldiers.
Oh, Face ended up playing soldiers. Okay, so I played
Yeah,
the
he
Always Face
fetched
deck.
Alex's deck for you because he's in like Australia time, so he was definitely asleep when you were asking about the deck this morning.
It was a very appreciative team effort there. I like apologize for the bad at time there, but yeah, it was worth it because it got me to the day 2. So I doubt there's any hard feelings about it or whatever. But
no,
yeah, I mean the deck is pretty self-explanatory. A lot of these decks today were pretty dirtily trying to do stuff that was slow, and Red just feasts on that. I noticed before the tournament I was getting super salty about getting exploited. But during the tournament, I was like, yeah, look at my cards. There's mono red. What are you going to do about it? Like,
yeah,
it's
here's an
coming
aggressive
for
red
you.
card.
Go ahead
Here's
and
another one.
take one of my aggressive cards. The rest of them are still coming for you.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if you want me to go through the deck list. It's pretty
No, I'll have it on the show notes for people to check out. So if they want to take a look at it, but you could just kind of go over some of the key points about it, maybe type of opening hands and what lines are your preferred, or if there's any synergies that the deck's really going for. I mean, I know it's mono red. You pretty much just want to go blades out every turn, but
basically it does have some neat things that it can do. A card that really like I was just calling it the hoser because I mean it was just not letting people do their game plan. It was just Grand Suppressor, which kind of hoses your deck too a little bit. That's the 2/3 for 2 colorless that cards can't use summon abilities, and that's like almost every unit getting played in Expedition is like something with the summon effect. So it just really helps when you pull out your Balax, the Ravenous, out of the market, and you don't have to sacrifice units leading up to 8. There's a lot of overwhelm, and the card, the Might
Are
Reaver.
you just as aggressive with Grand Suppressor as your other 2 drops, or do you kind of leave him back to allow him to survive longer?
He's pretty much unless I need him to die because I'm wanting to actually trigger one of my enter the battlefield effects at like later in the game or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we didn't enter too much combat unless it was like an empty board, or you don't attack into open yellow mana because of the ambush or whatever. But it kind of does have some like nombos with Vadius. So you pretty much don't ever want to play a Vadius after a Grand Suppressor because it just is, it's not good, right? You have a 3/2 that has to attack that's gonna just give them +2 to their top unit. So it's like a aggro deck that does have some decisions to make too. It's not just like totally, top unit smash or whatever. It does have some decision trees involved, and you just want a 1-drop, a 2-drop, a 3-drop, a 4-drop, a 5-drop, and then just kill their units and do double damage with your units and with overwhelm, and that's pretty much the deck. It's like it does have auto treads to help, I think, mostly against mandrakes and against regen. I did win a game by just going all in on one and making it huge. So it does have like multiple avenues for victory.
How did Vadius play out for you? Because I've got pretty mixed feelings about that card, or just maybe actually just straight up lean on unimpressed with it, to be honest with you.
Like it played pretty well with the overwhelm.
Okay, the side slash, yeah.
Yeah, the side slasher if you get the rampage out of the market, because it's like already 7, and then if it's double damage,
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, it's so good. Like it's like and then when it dies, you can put it the weapon on your passionate stone hammers, so that works really well as a target for the I always forget the name of the weapon that the Vadius make. Chakram. Yeah. There you go.
You also have that quick draw guy. The weapon's good there, and
yeah, the weapon it's good on a lot of the units that you have. Flash Fry was a nice card to deal with units for 2. It is fast speed. It
especially Vine Grafter, public enemy number 1.
Yeah, it works very well. This deck is designed well to not get hosed by regenerate, which the soldier deck does with regen, because the soldier deck tends to. Blazing Salvo is the market access.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the market, if you don't mind. How did that play out? Like, obviously, the market is Balax the Ravenous, the new 8/8 for 2. Promo, Edict of Shavka, Gloves of the Pyromancer, Incendiary Slagmite, and then Rampage.
So my most common thing out of the market was like Edict of Shavka against Huru deck. Balax when you have the Denouncer out. Or Suppressor, sorry. Or getting a Rampage last minute to win a combat / kill your opponent with a double damage unit, and doing 2 damage to the unit that it's trampling over or whatever, helps even more damage get through. That was my most common play, to be honest. I got a lot of kills like that, pulling the Rampage.
What was the last question, unless you have one, John? What was the most common mode you chose on Siege?
The +3/+3 weapon.
Yeah, there. That's pretty consistent around most players, me included.
Any Might Weaver deck, that's like 100% of the time.
There was one deck I one game where I chose the piercing shot, because my opponent was at 1, and I was like, okay, if it gets through one time, then the piercing shot's gonna kill them. So they have to block it, and they were damned if you do, damned if you don't on that one.
Mhm.
So
Show enough. John, do you have anything to add or ask, Alex?
No, congrats, buddy.
right on, thanks.
Well played.
Speaking of congrats, I want to go ahead and give a shout out to the other members of Eternal Journey that made it. IP team captain, team kill, long no made it. Of course, rocking it with soldiers. Alex Fierro, always face, and I'm missing one. Ash was just shy of it.
Stormguard
We're
made
missing
it as well.
Stoneguard. There you go. Thank you.
On our team's version of the old rainbow sling.
No kidding. He took 5-color sling.
Mhm.
Oh wow, that's super cool. He just couldn't. Yeah, I feel like as a whole, like obviously I was super busy this week and I didn't really get to participate, but I was keeping up with chat, and it felt like it was very difficult to identify a quote unquote best deck in this format, which is great. Like I think
Yeah,
that
there
is
wasn't
fantastic.
one. Just wasn't one.
Yeah. So shout out to the devs at Dire Wolf, Andrew Beckstrom, LSV, Patrick Chapin, Corey Burkhart for just the hard work that they do. Obviously kind of balancing this game out and stuff. I think it's great. We've already kind of gotten used to the whole after a tournament, a week or two before the next one, we see nerfs and buffs to kind of create a more balanced and diversified meta, and I think they've done a fantastic job on that. It's definitely not easy, so shout out to them. But yeah, once again, shout out to our teammates, IP Longno, Stormguard, Always Face, and Alex Fierro and Arthur Herman 2 for making day 2. Man, 5 people made it to day 2. That's sick. So good. I'm so proud of you guys.
You got a great showing, and day 2's tomorrow, so I'm extra excited to see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's why we haven't congratulated a winner or anything. Maybe we'll have them on the show if Alex, we might not have to have you go track down the winner, man. You might be the winner, bro.
I was just happy to make it to day 2. Like thrilled beyond belief. I'm not saying I'm not going to try hard to win tomorrow, but yeah, I'm just cool with where I made it.
I just kind of picture the collectors, the boxers, the lights out aces just like showing up with their cup of coffee, stretching or whatever, and then you have first timer Alex sitting there with his camera taking pictures like, "Hey mom, I'm calling you from day 2." Oh man, I think it's great.
Yeah, tomorrow's going to be a little bit of a circus here.
Oh boy.
During these games, yeah, but I'll make it happen. We're gonna make it happen.
No man, hire a babysitter, bro. I got you. I'll PayPal you the money. Hire a babysitter, and then hire the babysitter, and then send Miss Darth Herman 2 to go get her hair did or something. Oh yeah. I'll pay for that too. You lock yourself up in the room, man. Focus. You got this.
Yeah, it'll be good.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you so much for tuning and listening. Really do appreciate it. You guys are awesome. Good luck to all the day 2. Yep. Day 2 competitors tomorrow. Thanks to Direwolf for making such a great game. And then, yeah, thank you again, listeners, for hanging out with us. You guys are fantastic. I like doing this show. Great. But until next time, as always, happy gaming.
Good night.
Good luck in your draft keys, everyone.